Hello everyone, this is part 24 of What If Naruto Was Born in the Uzumaki clan, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Kiri, your mother is safe and we shall remain hidden until you send your people for us. Danzo is S. For the peace of the Hidden Leaf Village, but most of all for you, Naruto Uzumaki, your brother Obito and his comrades S, being known as criminals and traitors. They accepted disgrace in the place of honor, and hatred in the place of love. Yet your brother still S with a smile on his face for you despite never knowing you. Regards, Tsunade Senju. Conan stood silently as the letter crumbled in Naruto's hand with tears arriving in his eyes. He collapsed in his chair motionlessly and stared miserably at the crumbled paper. Another member of his family gone. First his father. And now his brother. They both S for him and his dream without ever expecting anything in return. And he never got to know them both. Conan came forward and wrapped her arms around him as he collapsed in her embrace. All his life he had hated and loathed Obito for having the family he never had. Now what he would not give to have his brother back, to meet him, to get to know him, to protect him. He should have marched to Konoha like his heart wanted him to. Yet he listened to his mind and went to Kiri to make the union stronger, and now his brother was S. Neither Danzo's death or Kushina's rescue consoled the unbearable grief in his heart. For the past week, his forces had landed across the Water Nation and joined up with the resistance. Together, under Mai Terumi's guidance, they had routed most of the Mizukage's loyalists. There were not many left because most of them had S at his own hands at Castle Storm, including 4 of the great swordsmen of Kiri. The remaining 2 of that order had also S within the weak at Kisam's hands. Now all that was left was the village of Kirigakure, where the madman had holed himself up with his remaining 1,000 loyalists. Most of them being the equally mad Kaguya clan members. Mai had already agreed readily to his terms of joining the Union and making the Land of Water a part of the New World Order. In return for his support to her nation in this dire hour, she had promised nearly 15,000 ninjas for his war once the Mizukage was removed. Mai would become the next leader of her nation, and the fact that she had taken a charm to Yahiko was another promising prospect. With this new alliance, he could march back to the mainland and put an end to this war. With so many soldiers at his command and Kisame back with him, he would finish Konoha and Iwa once and for all. He had not yet received any new messages from either Nagato or Daibutsu, which was worrying him. Last he had heard, Nagato was marching south towards Saru River, and Daibutsu was continuing raiding the land of Earth to harass Onoki's supply lines just as he was ordered to do. I have to end this war before I lose more of my family, he whispered sadly. We will, promised Conan. He took strength from her and that determined gaze in her eyes. She was stronger than him and he was glad he brought her here with him. They had become so much closer and now he didn't want to be away from her any longer. Why did Obito do such a thing for me? Asked Naruto miserably, trying to recall the faint image of his brother he had once seen in Minato's memories. Gods, he didn't have a picture of his brother. He was his father's son, just like you. Obito loved Konoha and wanted to protect the people from Danzo's madness, but most of all he cared about Kushina, who was like a mother to him in all but name, and in his own way he cared for you because you were family. It cannot be explained, but that is love, explained Conan sympathetically. I want this war to end before I lose anyone else, he said. Then let's finish what we came here for, she proposed. There would be a time to grieve, to mourn for the ones who were lost, but now they had to fight. He looked in her eyes and after a few moments gave a determined nod. He was still suffering deeply inside, she could see it. But he was ready to do his duty. And that was all she could ask from him right now. What's the situation? He asked after a moment. In an hour, Mai Terumi and Yahiko will lead the bulk of our army to attack Kiri from the main gates. That would draw the attention of most of the loyalists, allowing our fleet to sail in from port. There are barely a handful ships guarding it as the Mizukage is expecting a land attack, informed Conan. I want those ships to be preserved. They can travel much faster than our ships. Once we have our victory, I'll march straight to the mainland, he decided seriously. Right away. asked Conan in surprise. The men can rest on the journey back home. But I am not going to spend any more time here than necessary. I have the army now and my friends need my help. I am going, he said, daring her to oppose. She didn't. Very well. Then I shall come with you as well. Yahiko can help May settle her affairs before attacking Land of Fire with the reserves. The main army shall march with us. I'll also send a message to Lord Arima to direct the remaining northern forces towards Iwa in the next 3 days, suggested Conan, earning a nod from him. Good. Take command of the fleet and see that the enemy ships are taken care of. I have no interest in prisoners, kill them all. Conan gulped on his icy tone and the even more merciless order. What if they're young ninjas? She asked hesitantly. Kill them all. She nodded at her king when he looked at her intently with those cold eyes. The loyalists were done for now, all they could hope for was a quick death. He got up from the chair and picked up his sword to march towards the door. I'll kill the Mizukage, he promised. You'll be careful, won't you? She asked worriedly, earning a nod from him. There was no point in asking him to be safe or remain alive because they were both going in battle. But she could ask him this. Yes, and you'll do the same, he ordered, earning a small smile from her. Yes, my king. When he stepped on the deck he found a familiar man waiting for him with his shark-like grin. Kiss him, I thought you'll be with our main army storming the gates of Kiri, said Naruto in surprise. Now why would I do that when I can fight beside you and get to kill the madman? Asked Kisum in AS voice. Naruto didn't smile back, which didn't go unnoticed by his long-time friend and ally. What happened? My half-brother while saving my mother, whispered Naruto. Then you were wrong about him, said Kisum hesitantly, and saw a regretful look arrive in the king's eyes. I was wrong about a lot of things. The Kiri ninja stepped before the boy and did something Naruto had never expected. Kisum knelt and offered his sword. Kisum, you have done more for me than anyone else in my entire life. You upheld the promise of our revolution, came to save my nation and my people even when I couldn't come to your aid at Castle Storm, said Kisum sincerely. You were surrounded by the loyalists. Without your help May would have it was better you stayed for now. Kiri will have a good future. Besides, I survived, didn't you? Teased Naruto with a faint smile, lacking his familiar innocence which was hidden behind his grief for his brother. Kisum shook his head. I will not hide behind those excuses. You asked me to come and I didn't, and for that I will never forgive myself. By luck, you managed to survive, for even the death god will be better off without your brooding for a while, joked Kisum. Naruto smiled at the remark, feeling some of his pain lessened over Obito's loss. You're my friend and a man of honor. A fool to some extent, but still my friend. Once Kiri has a new leader I want to pledge my life for you, my sword to protect your life from this day till my last, promised Kisum. The king's eyes widened on hearing the proposal offered to him. Kisum Hoshigaki was not a man who would kneel for anyone or promise anything. Yet here he was offering his life. The swordsman must have seen the look in the king's eyes as he explained. You have earned this honor, Naruto. You helped my nation, my people, and are fulfilling my dream of a stable future. Yet you will have to struggle for the rest of your life to maintain the peace because that is the only way. I want to be by your side to help you. I have no interest in having a family or living in Kiri, too many bad memories. May is a good leader, but I don't want to serve her. I want to serve you, me and my new Samehada. If you will have us, said Kisum seriously, glancing at his new powerful sword which he had gained after its previous master. Naruto smiled truly and offered his hand to his strange but loyal friend, who took it with a shark-like grin. The honor will be mine, Kisum Hoshikage, said the king happily. Just don't expect me to call you king or any other fancy les, warned Kisum, earning a brief chuckle from the redhead boy. Never. I'll always be Naruto for you, he promised. Kisum nodded with a smile. They both walked towards the bird Conan had prepared and stepped on it. The king looked back to see her standing at the helm of the naval flagship, giving him a confident smile. He gave her a brief smile. It was time to face a cage. When they landed inside the village, it was shrouded in thick mist. Naruto could barely make out Kisum and the other dozen northern soldiers who had accompanied him. Kisum had informed them about the death of the three-tails Jinchuriki, but the last Jinchuriki was still in the village and extremely loyal towards the Mizukage. The fact that he contained the 6 tails was a matter of concern. The Mizuki himself was a Kaguya feared for his battle prowess, enough to even make Kisame wary and fully alert. Mizuki Kaguya had a unique bloodline that was said to have helped him butcher hundreds of rebels in single combat. Combined with his Jinchuriki bodyguard, he was a force to be feared. For that reason alone Naruto had brought many of the Uzumaki sealing specialists to contain the Jinchuriki as fast as possible. Then he could focus on the Mizuki. Outstretching his hand he connected his chakra with the mist, and to his soldiers' surprise it started to disappear as their king sucked in the chakra powering the jutsu in his own body. When the area cleared, their enemy was waiting for them. 24 Kiri Anbus standing in front of a man with pale white hair and a dark-haired man with a disturbing aura that was surely the Jinchuriki, Utakata. King in the north, I take it? Asked Mizuki Kaguya mockingly. Naruto didn't bother to reply and ignited the flames of hellfire on his sword. Around him his followers and Kisame unleashed their own swords and weapons. Not a talker, are you? They always did say that the silent ones scream most when facing my music, teased Mizuki. The Kiri leader nodded and the next second the Anbus charged. Even from the distance Naruto could feel their be and madness. His eyes turned dark red as he called forth his dark chakra and connected himself to those dark emotions. Mizuki frowned when his Anbu forces stopped immediately and many of them were shaking. His chakra is corrupt, warned Utakata. Interesting. Perhaps this will make it much more entertaining, said an amused Mizuki. Kisame had to control his anger on seeing his former leader not even flinch on the horrible deaths of his men. He was just as mad like the rest of his clan. Even the Uzumaki and northern soldiers were not left unaffected by their king's actions, who stood impassively in front of his enemies. Utakata then stopped forward before Naruto. The northern forces stood the ground just as their king had ordered, for their purpose was clear. Only Kisame stepped forward beside his friend, earning a sharp look from Mizuki Kaguya. I'll skin you alive, traitor, warned Mizuki. Naruto looked back at his friend as they both shared a nod. Utakata quickly brought forth his pipe. Suten, Homatsu no Jutsu, water release, water bubbles technique. Naruto narrowed his eyes when dozens of bubbles were unleashed and he immediately sensed the volatile energy in them ready to be unleashed. Explosive chakra. From his pouch he brought forward a three-pronged kunai and smirked on seeing Mizuki's smile vanish. He was not good as his father was, but this advantage would help him nonetheless. He threw the kunai and made a one-handed seal which transformed the weapon into dozens of replicas. Utakata's eyes widened when the king vanished right before his eyes, followed by a dark flash. When the first bubble was apart, it didn't explode like it was supposed to on first touch. There were several more flashes as more and more of the bubbles were taken down. In haste he joined his hands. Kai! Yelled Utakata. The remaining bubbles exploded instantly as Naruto appeared in mid-air, and to Utakata's horror the king absorbed the energy with one hand before unleashing a chakra wave that destroyed nearby buildings to pieces. When Naruto landed on the ground, Utakata screamed as a chakra chain emerged from beneath the ground and wrapped itself around his legs. It burned his skin as Kisame laughed and jumped towards the trapped Jinchuriki, only to be sent sailing away courtesy of a bone-crushing kick from Mizuki. Naruto had to jump quickly from the ground as the next moment an army of bones emerged, impaling several northern soldiers who were killed instantly. The few who were left instantly jumped towards the rooftops, now wary of the Mizuki, who was taking things seriously. The sounds of a great battle reached them from the gates where Mei had begun her attack. Unleashing a bone from his palm, Mizuki broke the chakra chain around Utakata in one swift strike, much to Naruto's surprise. Unleash your full power and crush the rebel army with my loyalists, commanded Utakata in a voice, his eyes fixed on Naruto intensely. What about them? Asked Utakata warily. You'll be more useful and safe on the battlefield. Go. Utakata broke out into a sprint as Naruto instantly made to follow him, but Mizuki created a dense bone forest blocking his way. Not so fast. It's fitting you face me, warned Mizuki. Kisame, northerners, after him, yelled Naruto urgently, earning swift nods from his men who ran after the Jinchuriki who had already started to transform. If he reached the allied forces there would be Naruto also tossed one of his three-pronged kunai to Kisame, and Mizuki tried to stop him but was prevented when Naruto blocked his way this time. I accept your challenge, he said icily. So you're the Yellow Flash's son. You have his eyes and that flashy jutsu he was famous for, commented Mizuki. I am, replied Naruto proudly. There was a time when any association of him with Minato would have made him angry. But things had changed quite a lot and he was now proud to be called that man's son despite the troubled relationship. You seem like a smart and powerful person for having defeated Kumo and conquering the entire North. Why not ally with me? Kiri and the North can be allies, you know, proposed Mizuki with a smirk, raising an eyebrow from Naruto. And forget your attempt at my life. The suffering of my village at your hands. No, you will here. Very painfully, assured Naruto, remembering all his clansmen that had perished. He had to revenge them, no matter what. Had to try, shrugged Mizuki. You're mad. And happy to be so. Naruto watched in surprise as sharp bone shards emerged all over the Mizukage's body and the man also birthed two long pointed bone swords from his palms and wielded them swiftly. In return Naruto his sword in the ground as green flames spanned across the entire area creating a barrier of unbreakable fire. No water jutsu would be able to break it. So it begins, said Mizuki excitedly. Only one shall survive, promised Naruto icily. The Mizukage was right in front of him with blinding speed, his bone swords already about to pierce Naruto's armor only for the king to vanish in dark smoke. Naruto appeared behind the Kiri leader and made a horizontal swipe towards the Kaguya's head. Only for a bone to emerge from the Mizukage's end and block his attack. Sparks flew as metal connected with bone and the green flames of hellfire connected. Teshi Senden, 10-finger drilling bullets. Naruto's eyes widened when bone bullets were unleashed from Mizuki's back and he had to bring forward his flaming sword to swiftly deflect the army of attacks. He parried and countered bullet after bullet hoping the barrage would end, but Mizuki maniacally laughed and unleashed more and more bone bullets from his body. He coughed and had to teleport himself to a safe distance. He looked at his shredded armor and tossed it away knowing it was useless now and would only hamper his speed. Mizuki simply ejected the single bone that had been hit by Naruto's flaming sword out of his body and turned back towards his opponent with a sick smile on his face. So, this is the power of a cage, thought Naruto grimly. He racked his brain for any ideas to counter those bones that were strong enough to withstand a powerful attack from his sword without a scratch. Close-quarter combat with Mizuki would result into him getting skewered by any number of bone attacks the man could unleash on a moment's notice, and there was no limit to his attacks. Suten, Daibafuku no Jutsu, water release, great waterfall technique. Mizuki unleashed a monstrous wave of water that destroyed buildings in its aftermath and headed straight for Naruto. In response, Naruto his sword in the ground, unleashing his own wave of green fire that clashed head-on with the incoming tidal wave. Steam rose in the air as the flames doused the water and he cursed himself as he couldn't see a thing. Can't absorb this mist now, can you? Because it is natural, made from fire's contact with water and has no chakra, mocked Mizuki, hiding expertly in the mist. This was his element and was exactly what he had in mind when he unleashed that water wave. So you were paying attention to my moves, said Naruto with a frown. He couldn't even sense his enemy's chakra for he was expertly suppressing his presence. I am the Mizukage, boy. Naruto had to give the man some credit. Despite his madness and brutality, Mizuki was an expert fighter with a sharp mind. It would take some time for the air to clear again and those few minutes would be very dangerous for him. He was at a severe disadvantage, and he could only hope Kisame, Mei and the other rebels could defeat Utakata as the sound of explosions reached his ears revealing the Jinchuriki had begun to wreak havoc. He could simply teleport to that battlefield, but Mizuki would follow after him, and after seeing the Mizukage's close-quarter combat it would only result into more casualties. No, he had to keep him occupied and hope his comrades could handle Utakata. Terrified, Naruto swiftly parried away a bone sword that came sailing out of the natural mist. He was soon engaged in a dance with his sword, parrying away bone after bone as Mizuki laughed madly from within the mist. That must have hurt. And it only is the beginning, teased Mizuki with a cruel smirk. Mizuki was thrown straight out of the mist, but he gracefully landed on the ground and saw the spine in his hand was marked by a seal. Teleportation. He cursed and threw away the tainted weapon and glared at his enemy who stared at him impassively. He cursed in a strained voice, feeling his chi constrict painfully as the corrupt chakra started spreading across his body. Naruto was panting harshly, the toll of using that many teleportations continuously combined with healing his wounds and using chakra chains was burning through his chakra reserves at great speed. He cursed his chakra points for not being developed in his infancy due to being affected by the Kyuubi's chakra. But then again his dark powers had also been another good side effect of that incident. Whatever the case, he had to fight quickly now that he had discovered a key weakness. He remembered his clan's suffering, his Akatsuki soldiers' at Castle Storm on hands of Kiri Shinobi, the ninja swordsman trying to K him at this man's orders. Mizuki felt a monstrous K intent descending upon the area and to his horror Naruto started rising in the sky. The boy could fly. He rose higher and higher, his dark chakra taking the form of a demonic skull. Slowly even the moon was concealed behind the dark energy that spread across the sky. From Naruto's flaming sword green flames emerged to form the familiar Uzumaki spiral on his back. The boy's intense red eyes burned with unforgivable hatred. And Mizuki took a step back worried for the first time. Good. Fear will all you know in your last moment, whispered a voice in his head. Kai! Yelled Mizuki in panic, he had to dispel the genjutsu but was only assaulted by the boy's demonic laughter raging across his head. What is this? Roared the Mizuki furiously, this was not a genjutsu. His eyes widened when a dozen chakra chains rained down from the sky and to his horror he couldn't move fast enough despite ordering his body to do so. He screamed as the corrupted chains lashed strike after strike across his body. Naruto watched as Mizuki tried desperately to deflect his chains with bones but the more he tried the more he suffered. Every attempt to escape earned him severe backlash as the armada of chains surrounded him like a beehive. Mizuki's screams could be heard across the entire village but Naruto relished them remembering all his people that were because of this madman. You burned my village, it is courtesy that I return the favor to you, said Naruto. Mizuki was on his knees half trying to battle away the horde of corrupted chakra chains with his bones which were getting destroyed over and over. How was this possible? He barely watched a flash of green light before he screamed inhumanely. Naruto pressed his flaming sword near his C on the point of contact holding the main chakra chain sending the hellfire right down towards the horde of black chakra chains that had trapped the Mizuki. Mizuki felt heat like never before and started coughing and all he could see was green everywhere. He watched in horror as his remaining clothes burned away as his skin started to melt. Naruto willed his chains to close in around the burning Mizuki in the shape of a dome trapping him in a final death trap. He started flying towards the battlefield with a sick smile hearing Mizuki's scream as the dome was also towed behind the king. When they finally reached the battlefield, most of the loyalists had already been down by the superior allied forces made up of northerners and Kiri rebels. The few that were left were making their last stand while Utakata was panting harshly with his Biju chakra gone and Kisame grinning as his monstrous sword ate the last of the Biju chakra. But they all stopped as the first of the inhuman screams reached them. Mei and her rebels watched in horror as the dome of chains was slightly opened to reveal a half-melted Mizuki Kaguya who was screaming inhumanely as green flames consumed him rapidly. The man who had burned alive hundreds was now facing the same fate but it was 1,000 times worse as even from the ground Mei could feel the heat. She could only imagine the horror Mizuki was experiencing. And then they heard the laugh. That mad laugh. Yahiko had only seen Naruto's madness once when they had fought against the Iwa forces that were trying to attack Am. If what Naruto had done to them was terrible, then what he was doing to Mizuki was inhuman. And he was laughing. Kisame was not so much affected and grinned. Using the momentary pause, he rushed towards Utakata who was staring at his leader in horror. The Jinchuriki turned only seeing a brief glimpse of Samehada. The few Kaguya clan members roared on seeing their beloved clan leader and Mizuki be burned like this. They rushed in Naruto's direction only for another dozen chains to rain down from the sky splashing their brains across the battlefield. Naruto stared at the shocked rebels and his own men, he roared. This is my justice for you Zu. He would have laughed more and relished the victory and justice he had brought for his people had he not seen Konan flying towards him with tears in her eyes clutching a new letter in her hands. She looked so heartbroken which only sent a new wave of dread through his heart. There were not many things that could make his angel cry like that. She was a strong woman, even stronger than him. What could make her cry like this? He had already lost Katsuro, so many of his clan, his father, his little brother. With shaking hands he took the letter from her when she refused to meet his eyes. The message was short but it destroyed his world. Nagato is S. Half of Union army defeated. Konoha victorious marching towards a Megacure. The inhuman roar that followed would forever be remembered in the land of water. 2 weeks later, Akeno stood atop the fort staring down at the depths of the mountain. She numbly discovered the enemy camp had edged even more closer to the last Union outpost in the area. The Battle of Trident had been a disaster. 8,000 S. More than 1,000 wounded and 500 missing. Nagato and most of his top commanders S. She didn't even want to think about the thousands of civilians that must have S. It would break her heart again. Mifune had retreated to the mountain and taken shelter in this old samurai fort with the roughly 10,000 Union soldiers who had survived the morale had been crushed with their leader's demise and such horrible losses. She had been numb for 3 days, unable to eat, drink or sleep as she relived Nagato's last moments over and over. Tears arrived in her eyes as she regretted agreeing with Nagato to cross that river. They should have stayed and retreated to the mountain to wait for Naruto's arrival. And now, for the first time in her life, she felt disappointed with Naruto. If only he had been here, Nagato would have. When would this end? She wanted to go home, back to her small village, to those old streets and familiar people, to forget about this nightmare. But now she found herself being the new Union leader. It was Mifune who had nominated her and she had agreed reluctantly, if only to satisfy the loyal old man who had saved her life and kept the army together. And she had rewarded that dedication with her first and last order. Akeno watched more and more of her soldiers trickle down towards the secret caves. Today's group would be the last to leave for a Megacure and help crush a Wagakure. Under Mifune's firm command, the 9,500-strong Akatsuki could change the dire scenario. And if Iwa was defeated, then their allies would have more of a chance than her holding the entire army on this mountain waiting to be S. Konoha forces had hounded her day after day, capturing more and more parts of the large mountain. And now they were at her doorsteps. They could have taken another route to reach a Megacure and take Hanzo by surprise, but she had portrayed the illusion that the Union army was here instead of secretly running away towards Hanzo. Not wanting to turn their backs on Akeno's force that could stage a surprise attack on their rear, Konoha forces had decided to finish the Union army once and for all before marching towards a Megacure. If only they knew how wrong they were. All she had left were the 500 soldiers that had decided to stay back with her to hold the enemy as long as possible so that their remaining allies could defeat Iwa. She felt 2 figures stepping beside her and observed the enemy that would attack the fort soon enough. If Konoha has this kind of power, what chance do we have? Asked Mifune bitterly. We have hope. The old samurai stared at the young silver-haired girl. How could she and her kind be so strong? Losing their village, their people, being betrayed by allies, running for months, fighting against great nations, bearing the loss of dear friends. And yet these Uzumaki never gave up. Stubborn as hell, just as Nagato had stated. It was clearly displayed when Akeno looked at him and Pakura with the same fire burning in her eyes. Revolutions are built on hopes, said Akeno decisively. The samurai and Suna Kanoiki's eyes widened on hearing Akeno say that before smiling at her. Our rebellion is all that stands between Konoha and Iwa's tyranny. We have lost so much, they have the numbers and all the advantage. But what they don't understand is that numbers don't win wars. But a dream does. Nagato gave his life for that. So did my clan's children, Chio, and Rasa too. Konoha can never understand the power of their S, for they don't even hesitate to S their own people. Justice is with us, and with that each of our soldier will be equal to 10 of theirs, explained Akeno proudly. She had never been a leader, being content to first follow Naruto's lead and then Nagato's. But it was her time now. And she would lift the Union back up to win this war. Then I'll stay with you, for it is my dream too, decided Pakura. I'm honored, said Akeno with a smile. Mifune stared at these 2 women fighting back, the tears threatening to spill from his eyes. So he presented them his sword and knelt only to look directly in Akeno's eyes. On my honor as a samurai, I promise to defeat a Wagakure with our allies. No matter how long it takes or how many more S we have to make, we'll fight till Konoha is destroyed. We'll take the next chance and the next until our dream is fulfilled, promised Mifune honestly. Akeno knelt and grasped her hand around the older man's shoulders, giving him a nod. Save the Union. Save our dream. Mifune nodded before sharing one last glance at Pakura, and then he turned around to join the last soldiers who entered in the secret caves. Akeno ordered the nearby squad leader to seal the caves permanently once the last of the retreating Union forces disappeared. She turned back to see the first rays of the sun about to reach the skies. You know, they expect us to surrender, said Pakura with a grin, receiving a faint smile from Akeno. F that. We are rebels. Pakura laughed alongside the silver-haired girl, sharing this one final moment before they marched straight into hell. Akeno had done well to lead them despite her lack of experience. She knew it was impossible for 10,000 Union soldiers to fight for a simple mountain when their enemy outnumbered them heavily. Instead, they could be more useful on the Iwa front. But a full-blown retreat would have alerted Konoha, and they would have rushed in to stop that, leading to another one which the Union would not survive. So Akeno had created a smart ruse. Day by day the Union would retreat further up on the mountain, engaging only in brief skirmishes with the advancing enemy. While the bulk of the army kept Konoha in check, every day hundreds of soldiers would retreat through the caves towards Omegakure in secret. For the past few days almost more than 9,500 soldiers had retreated, and the remaining 500 now had decided to remain behind to buy as much time as they could to allow their comrades to reach Hanzo. Konoha had been made to believe that most of the Union army was hiding in the massive fort and inner mountain areas. But when the sun rose, the lie would be exposed. You can go, Akeno. I'll hold them off, offered Pakura, earning a grateful smile from the girl before she shook her head. Konoha knows I am the new Union leader. Every day I have made a presence on the battlefield, making them believe I intend to fight till death. If I run away, they would discover the truth and run after our main retreating army. No matter what happens, they must reach Am to help Hanzo and the Kazekage. With those many Union soldiers, they could possibly win if they play their cards right. Besides, I'm tired. For the past 2 years, I have fought endlessly. It ends here, said Akeno with a resigned smile. She could not save her village, her Azukage, her clan's young ones, couldn't save Nagato. She could never receive Naruto's love and affection no matter how much she tried. At least this way, she could offer him a fighting chance to create the future they had all dreamed of. Naruto had lived a painful life unlike her and Nagato. If he could live peacefully, then she and Nagato would be at peace. She was disappointed over his decision to go to Kiri, but her and Nagato had also made many mistakes. They were all doing their best, but sometimes it was just not enough. And no matter what happened, Nagato would forgive their friend one day. And so would she. For they both loved him. Prepare for battle. The ground was shaking beneath their feet, marking the approach of the enemy army. Akeno sat atop her giant vulture, staring down at the brave ones who had stayed for her. They knew what awaited them. She had 2 commanders who will make the army follow after her in the final battle. Pakura proudly stood atop her giant scorpion summon, looking equally beautiful and while a relatively young Junin by the name of Sasori was the only other commander who had decided to stay. The puppet master was a dangerous shinobi and had proven himself more than capable on the battlefield. The rest of the 500-strong Union army was made up of mostly Zetsu soldiers and 24 Omegakure and Sunagakure ninjas. Even a few samurais who had decided to with honor. Akeno saw the enormous Konoha army approaching towards them and smiled. Citizens of Union, my soldiers, my friends. She yelled defiantly. Her strong command made them stand much straighter and prouder than before as they looked at her expectantly. We have also suffered loss and experienced pain together. But from that suffering we became more stronger. The bonds we share are created in B. Today, I see in your eyes the desire to fight and beside each other. There were cheers and proud nods at her declaration which made her smile. Today we remember every person who gave his life for us and our dream. They never wanted lands or power, all they had hoped for was a good future where we all could live together, share our joys and sorrows, stand by each other in time of need. That was their wish, and for that my friend our brothers and friends Silence stretched across the Union forces as the memory of the hit them hard, but unlike the past where it had brought only pain, this time it ignited the desire for vengeance. Akino unleashed her sword and pointed it at the approaching massive army. What kind of soldiers are those that don't hesitate in killing their own people from glory? They are monsters who deserve to be seen down like the mad dogs they are. Roared Akino. Fight! Roared Pakura, earning loud shouts from her forces. The enemy may outnumber us, but today we fight against tyranny and greed, not just for Azu or Am or Suna, but for the entire Union. And the future that this new order holds, declared Akino, as her vulture turned towards the enemy army. The gates of the fort were opened as the Union army looked at her one last time. Fight! For Nagato! For the Union! She commanded her faithful summon Ultras to fly ahead. The giant vulture screeched eagerly and took to the battlefield skies, with the rest of the army following after them with a thunderous battle cry. The first massive enemy wave was less than 100 feet away when she pointed her sword. The vulture roared such a powerful sound wave that dozens upon dozens of Konoha forces fell to their knees, desperately clutching their ears to stop the unbearable sound. Blow them away, commanded Akino. Her soldiers instantly jumped forward to launch volley upon volley of kunai, shuriken and arrows high in the sky. Ultras flapped its wings widely, unleashing powerful winds that helped the sailing projectiles to fly faster and more far. The Konoha forces were yet to recover from the sound waves that had rendered most of them deaf. They could only watch in horror as death rained upon them, mercilessly ending their lives. Pakura, with me. Sasori, cover fire, yelled Akino, making her vulture fly forward. The Suna Kanoiki charged forward atop her massive scorpion as the black desert creature tore through lines upon lines of Konoha forces easily. Its frontal claws snapping several helpless men and women to shreds, while its massive L-tail sent more and more flying away across the mountain to their deaths. Pakura herself had finished her move and glared at the Konoha forces that had butchered her people. Shakuten, Kasojatsu, Scorch Release, extremely steaming M. The Suna Kanoiki formed a dozen flaming orbs bright like the sun and rained them down mercilessly, turning dozens of ninjas to mummified husks even as her beast wreaked carnage across the battlefield. Akino herself joined the battle again as her vulture spread its large wings. Aerial death rained down upon the disorganized enemy forces as the vulture transformed its wing skin to launch hundreds upon hundreds pointed spears. As the two Kanoiki wreaked carnage across the battlefield, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of enemies, Sasori stepped forward. The pale-skinned redhead calmly stared ahead before producing a scroll from his pouch. Akahigi, Hayaki no Soen, Red Secret Technique, Performance of 100 Puppets. 100 puppets emerged from the scroll as Sasori expertly created 3 shadow clones of himself, with all of them attaching chakra strings to the army of puppets. Advance, commanded Sasori. His clones and the puppet army joined the battle, shredding more of enemy forces. The mountain was now piling up with B upon B of Konoha forces, but Sasori also saw thousands more, recognizing the threat and rapidly approaching forward to silence the 2S females. So, he turned towards the Union forces. Rearguard, cover fire. 100 Union soldiers performed a set of hand seals before raising their heads. Doton, Sumboto, Earth Release, Flying Bullets. An army of earthen bullets sailed across the sky towards the next wave of approaching enemies, all of whom rapidly formed a massive earthen dome as barrage after barrage rained down on them. But their advance was halted. Sasori turned towards the rest of the Union army and nodded. Follow me. The Sand Ninja joined the carnage as hundreds of Union soldiers charged forward, and so began the BM. Shikaku Nara observed with a frown as his entire vanguard was butchered. A 1,000 ninjas within half an hour as the triumphant enemy marched forward to meet the next wave. They were good, but he didn't fail to notice that there were barely 500 of them. His eyes connected with the fierce silver-haired girl leading the charge. It would seem the new Union leader had tricked him. Either her main army was hiding in waiting, or they had retreated to join with a megacorps against Iwa. Shikaku, warned Inoiki. Yes, they are on a roll, sound the retreat order, commanded the Nara. But, Dirit, Inoiki raised his right hand to form a seal that connected him with the entire army. The next few seconds Shikaku watched as the army started to retreat down the hill. The Union was about to follow when Akino Uzumaki stopped them and instead started to reform her lines. Smart girl. She knows the further down the mountain she comes, the more quicker she'll get surrounded, thought Shikaku cleverly. The two armies were glaring down at each other with the tension heavy in the air. Shikaku narrowed his eyes at the two dangerous summons and the puppet army that had wreaked most of the damage to his forces. They were the Union's trump card. Onoiki, form 3 waves. The first made up of civilian soldiers, the second made up of Hyugas and the last made up from our special units, commanded Shikaku. The Yamanaka clan head glanced at his friend for a moment to see him completely relaxed. Neither the initial defeat or the fact that they outnumbered the enemy had broken Shikaku's composed command. He was neither arrogant or eager for victory. And he was ruthless in protecting his nation, for he was the mastermind behind half of the Union army being along with Nagato Uzumaki. Although that horrible but necessary action had been costly for them too. Many of the Land of Fire's towns were completely drowned, resulting in great loss of life and a major setback to their economy. They also had to so many of their ninjas to sell the trap in the first place. But worst was Jiraiya leaving their side and disappearing after witnessing the The student of Hiruzen had bitterly been made to accept Shikaku's proposal, but on seeing the loss of their own civilians and soldiers for that victory, Jiraiya's rage had been incomprehensible. If not for his loyalty for Konoha, he would have killed Shikaku for the atrocity. In the end, Onoiki had recommended the powerful man to take a walk and cool himself. A walk Jiraiya was yet to return from. The loss of their army commander had greatly dampened the victorious mood of their forces. But fortunately, Shikaku had taken command without any objection from the other clan heads, who now respected and feared the Nara. With him as their new army commander, this war could be won even without Jiraiya. Hopefully Jiraiya would be back soon. With those thoughts in mind, Onoiki gave the orders relayed to him by his best friend and commander. Akeno narrowed her eyes when she saw the enemy reorganizing their formations. Lighter armored people with no chakra stepped forward, making the first line, followed by pale-eyed Hyugas in the second line and a mixed group of shinobis hanging at the back. They were up to something, and it didn't bode well for her. After facing the catastrophic loss at the Battle of Trident, she was never going to underestimate Nara Shikaku even once. The man was ruthless, but one of the finest military generals in the whole world. Zetsu, do you know who those soldiers are standing at the end of the formation? Asked Akeno quickly. One of the lead Zetsu, who had been spying on the Konoha camp before the Battle of Trident, narrowed his eyes and then turned towards her with surprise in his eyes. Clan warriors, Akeno-sama. Particularly from Sarutobi, Nara, Yamanaka and Akamaki clans, answered Zetsu. Akeno looked around and discovered what the enemy was truly aiming at and yelled instantly. Pakura, Sasori, get back. The dangerous sand ninjas thankfully didn't question her judgment and instantly took cover, with the Union army taking the front. No sooner had they done that the reformed enemy lines charged. Akeno herself charged forward, unleashing dozens of smoke bombs from her pouch across the battlefield. The civilian fighters charged in like brutes and started coughing violently, only to fall moments later as the hidden L in the smoke took their lives. Earth style, she commanded. The Hyugas, who were part of the second line, dispersed the smoke with their chitin easily and charged forward. When they cleared across their comrades, they saw a wall of Union soldiers placing their hands on the ground. The pale-eyed warriors smirked. The rebels could not harm them, not with the Byakugan on their side. Their arrogance soon turned into horror as the Union revealed their move. Doton, Doru Tiger, Earth Release, Great Mud River. A river of mud was unleashed by the Union forces that started rolling down the steep mountain at dangerous speeds. Akeno had finished her own set of hand seals. Hiyashi Hyuga and his clansmen were already rotating at top speed. Chitin. The Hyugas, despite their unbreakable defense, could not match the raging wave of mud river that had gained dangerous speed and mixed with large rocks as it descended down the mountain. Their wealthy clothes and fine armor only served to make them even more stiff as the mud river rained down on them. Kaiten, Goka Meshitsu, Fire Release, Great Fire Destruction. Akeno released a monstrous stream of intense flames that rained directly over the sticky Hyugas. The pale dojutsu users could only scream in agony as they started to burn. The silver-haired Uzumaki made her vulture screech, his ear-piercing sound waves bringing the already burning Hiyashi to his knees. The last thing he saw was the sight of a vulture descending right over him and Akeno's shining sword. The final wave of clan specialists blanched when the Hyuga patriarch was mercilessly beheaded and his rolled down the mountain gracelessly. The Hyuga line soon followed their clan head in death moments later. Pakura came charging after her ferocious leader as her scorpion summon raised his massive tail. Hundreds of L-Senbon-like projectiles were fired from that massive tail as Akino retreated back, watching in satisfaction as dozens of Nara and Yamanaka were hit. The Akamaki tried to expand their B, foolishly hoping it would save them, but minutes later they too courtesy of the S of the Scorpion. The Union Army roared proudly over the second victory that was until they saw a group of bugs descend all around Akino. And the next moment she fell from her vulture as the summon disappeared. Akino hit the ground with a painful sound and screamed. She exhaled chakra ferociously, burning away the Kikyachu who couldn't handle so much chakra. Thank gods for her gigantic Uzumaki reserves. Her summon being defeated was a great problem. It had already been low on chakra after so many powerful attacks, and the bugs had sucked the last of Ultras's chakra. When she managed to get back on her feet, she grunted in pain and saw her left leg was twisted at an odd angle. Broken. She heard another ferocious battle cry and saw hundreds of Konoha shinobi not far from her running towards her with M shining in their eyes. She saw she had fallen too far away from her forces, and without her summon along with the broken leg. With a sigh, she brought her sword forward to face her enemies on her feet to the death. The ground around her shook and she saw a scorpion sailing past her with a woman on top straight towards the gigantic enemy army. No! She yelled in horror. Pakura glanced at her briefly. You're the commander. Get back to safety. Akino's lips trembled as the scorpion and Pakura descended upon the enemy army, ferociously tearing apart dozens. Grabbing her sword, she started to march forward. She had to get her comrade out of there. She didn't care if she was limping or half tired. She had already lost Nagato. Not again. Suddenly she felt something connect with her back, and the next moment she was being pulled backwards and saw it was Sasori's doing. The puppet master pulled her back among their ranks with the chakra string attached to her back. Why? We have to get her back, screamed Akino angrily. It's over, whispered Sasori sadly. Akino whirled back to see the giant scorpion be frozen by Nara shadows and made to throw its own master from its back by the Yamanaka ninjas. Pakura landed violently on the ground as dozens of ninjas instantly surrounded her and started her over and over mercilessly. Sasori closed his eyes in momentary respect for his fallen comrade and fellow sand ninja. She had done her duty. He looked at Akino, who was fighting back tears. Her grip on the sword was so tight he thought it would break the hilt of the weapon. Looking over at the Union army, he saw most of the soldiers were tired. They had already lost more than half of their fighters and the rest were on their last legs. The Zetsus were particularly tired after performing jutsus and fighting constantly. Akino herself seemed tired and injured, if her broken leg and harsh panting was any proof. Those bugs must have sucked in quite a lot of chakra, even for an Uzumaki. They had done well despite the circumstances, if the thousands of S-tree huggers were any indication. Regroup, commanded Akino. Shikaku saw the remaining Union army slowly reforming their lines in their final defense. His own army had suffered quite severe losses, a stark proof of Shikaku's mistake of underestimating the Uzumaki girl. She had done well both in battle and command, yet numbers were against her. Shikaku, were ready, informed Inoiki, still looking quite shaken after seeing Hiyashi being killed by someone so young. The Nara nodded and raised his hand. Now, the Konoha lines started to move forward to finish the Union defenders when a warning bugle was raised from their rearguard standing at the bottom of the mountain. And then there was that sound. A wolf's howl. Shikaku rapidly turned back as the entire mountain and nearby landscape started to tremble violently. Looking below the mountain, across the river Saru where Konoha had previously made camp, was a sight that stopped the Nara's heart. The rising rays of the morning sun shined brightly on the shock of red hair sporting a crown with the person owning them galloping atop his monstrous white wolf. And behind was a 15,000-strong army. Conan was flying just over the charging army and pointed her hand forward. To the king! To the king! The allied army of Kiri and Northerns roared as Naruto Uzumaki unleashed his sword, making his roaring wolf cross the river. "K them all!" yelled the king. His flaming sword cleaved Shibi Aburame from head to toe as the man's bugs were burned to ash in the flames of hellfire. Naruto unleashed dozens of dark chakra chains, sending the entire first defensive lines of Konoha soldiers sailing everywhere. Ghost charged forward, tossing aside dozens of men as his master wreaked carnage. The allied army descended upon the broken ranks instantly, with Conan mercilessly preventing Konoha forces from forming any new defense. The battle-weary Konoha army trembled when Fugaku Uchiha tried to jump towards the king only to be pierced by dozens of chakra chains. Retreat. They'll KO us all. Panic broke across the battlefield as Konoha forces started running back upwards the mountain in order to save themselves from the M-King and his furious army. Face them, you cowards, commanded Shikaku, as he and Inoiki started to descend down the mountain to stop this madness. Inoiki performed his hand seals and aimed his attention at the giant wolf but froze when its rider transformed into dark smoke and headed straight towards him. Tossing aside hundreds in the way, the dark aura surrounded Inoiki in a flash. Shikaku yelled in horror when dark chains emerged from the smoke, piercing his beloved friend all over his body. He trembled when all of Inoki's limbs were torn apart, followed by his manhood, then half his body, his ears, his eyes, until Naruto Uzumaki was finally holding Shikaku's dearest friend's inhuman severed head in his right hand. It was barely even Inosuke anymore. You monster, said Shikaku angrily. I am indeed a monster, Shikaku Nara. Answer you, my friend Nagato was the better man and you butchered him along with thousands of my soldiers and innocent civilians. Now watch as I butcher every one of your people and rape your disgusting nation. By the end of this war, the land of fire will be destroyed to the last stone, promised Naruto. Shikaku snarled and trapped the king in his shadow instantly. He raised a kunai from his hand knowing the trapped boy would do the same. Only Naruto didn't. What? For someone considered so intelligent, you are a moron. Darkness is my power and your shadow style is pathetic, cursed Naruto. This is for Nagato. The Nara screamed as he was burned alive in the flames of hellfire. Soon enough he melted away. Naruto looked around to see the Konoha army losing the last of their morale on seeing the fall of their commander. His eyes searched for the presence of Jiraiya. He was going to kill that bastard. Where was he? He searched long and far as he see apart the few stupid enough to attack him. Hundreds of Konoha forced were throwing down their arms in offer of surrender, but to their horror they were killed regardless without an ounce of mercy. His massive army was making quick work of the enemy that had been taken by complete surprise. It was then he saw something that made him stop abruptly. He found her. Seeing her had overtaken all his anger, his desire to butcher Jiraiya and every last Konoha ninja as the need to reach her overwhelmed him. He thought he would never see her again and now she was right before his eyes. Alive. Tears fell from his eyes as he opened his arms as she jumped into his embrace. He didn't care if they were both covered in blood and guts, he didn't care if thousands surrounded him, he didn't care who saw them like this crying in each other's arms. Kisame and hundreds more allied soldiers had surrounded their king and Akeno Uzumaki, protecting them from anyone who dared to harm them. He looked at her and still saw the beautiful girl who grew up with him, who shared his joys and sorrows, supported him no matter what. There were tears in hers along with sadness and relief. Akeno looked at him with tearful eyes, still not able to believe that this was happening. That he was real. That he was finally here holding her in his strong arms, looking at her like she was his whole world. Her doubts vanished away when he kissed her fiercely. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.